Hello everybody. Today I'm going to show off the Slapchop method and how I think it can be improved on. We're doing two miniatures. The first slap chopped in about 30 minutes. The second, my method start to finish in 20. Go ahead and grab your brushes and let's go. Miniature painting has long been a delicate and time-consuming art form, demanding patience, precision, and an eye for detail. Traditional methods require carefully layering base coats, shadows, and highlights over many hours to achieve professional-looking results. However, in recent years, a technique known as the Slapchop method has taken the miniature painting world by storm, offering a faster and more efficient way to get stunning results with minimal effort. Created by Rob from The Honest Wargamer, the Slapchop technique flips conventional painting wisdom on its head, proving that high quality results don't have to come at the cost of endless hours of work. This method builds upon older techniques, particularly Zenithal Priming, which involves spraying a model with black primer, followed by a lighter spray, or in this case dry brush, from above to simulate natural lighting. However, Rob took this concept to a more accessible platform by introducing dry brushing as a key step for applying this color. This allows for more contrast and texture right from the start. The result? A technique that is both quick and effective, making it perfect for hobbyists looking to paint large armies or tabletop miniatures in record time. At its core, the Slapchop method is about creating contrast and texture first, and then letting transparent color do the rest of the work. The process can be broken down into three main steps. Prime the model black. A second is going to be heavy dry brushing with a gray or white. So after you finish priming, the model is then really taken to bat with a gray and then followed up with a lighter white paint afterwards. Dry brushing is a technique where a small amount of paint is applied to your brush, most of it's wiped off before then lightly brushing the model's surface. This process creates natural highlights on raised areas while leaving deeper areas darker, mimicking realistic lighting effects. The final white dry brush acts as a pre-highlight, giving the model a high contrast, almost monochrome appearance. Once your grayscale foundation is set, the final step is to apply thin and translucent paints, like contrast paints from Games Workshop or speed paints from Army Painter. These paints flow into the recesses, naturally creating shadows while keeping the highlights bright. Thanks to the dry brush texture underneath, the paint automatically blends into a rich, organic look, cutting down on the need for manual shading and layering. For both of these models, I'm going to be using the Speed Paint 2.0. Personally, I prefer them over contrast paint. When doing the method, I tend to dilute them about 1 to 1 with Speed Paint Medium. I think the final coat is much more smooth when done this way. If you go undiluted, it'll still work, but you can end with visible streaks if you aren't careful. To successfully apply speed paints or contrast paint, you have to control the flow and placement of the paint. Since speed paints are highly pigmented and designed to create natural shading, applying them smoothly prevents unwanted pooling or streaks. Go ahead and load your brush with a moderate amount of paint, then touch it to a raised area of the miniature and let capillary action pull the pigment into the recesses. Go ahead and work in small sections to avoid any coffee staining or rough marks from drying too quickly. Brush control is really key to achieving even coverage. Once the paint is on the model, you have a short amount of working time with it before it starts to dry. So if you get in an area that you don't want it, use a damp brush to manipulate it after you put it down, making sure to spread a lot of any excess pooling pigments away from deep recesses. Layering different speed paints can also create depth and richness in color. Just make sure to allow each layer to fully dry before applying another one to prevent any unwanted reactivation. The first wave of speed paint wasn't great about this, the second one I haven't really experienced any troubles with. For a more vibrant look, you can also apply thin glazes of a lighter or more saturated speed paint over your dry layers. If shading is needed for extra contrast, targeted application of a darker speed paint in recesses can also enhance depth. So why does the Slapchop method work? The genius of it lies in how it leverages contrast and texture right from the start, allowing for efficient and striking results. Here's why it's become so popular in my opinion. First, it's fast. Traditional painting can take hours and hours per model, but Slapchop lets painters complete entire squads or armies in a fraction of the time. Like this model here, 30 minutes start to finish. It's beginner friendly. Dry brushing is far easier to master than blending and layering, making Slapchop accessible to all new painters or painters that have been doing it forever. It enhances color vibrancy for really no extra effort. The pre-highlighted surface makes your colors pop, and you don't need to apply multiple layers over and over. And lastly, it works for any miniature. Whether you're painting Warhammer 40k, Dungeons and Dragons, or even historical figures, Slapchop is a versatile and effective method. Rob's invention has revolutionized the miniature painting community, especially among wargamers and hobbyists looking to speed up their workflow. And in this age where we're seeing a large influx of new painters come into the hobby, it's the perfect jumping off point. The technique exploded in popularity about a year ago thanks to YouTube tutorials, social media discussions, and its endorsement by other hobby influencers. What makes it even more exciting is that painters continue to refine and experiment with it, incorporating additional techniques like glazing, stippling, and edge highlighting for even better results. Ultimately, the Slapchop method is a game changer, a way for painters to get their miniatures looking fantastic without the perceived frustrations of traditional slow painting methods. Whether you're a veteran hobbyist or just getting started, Slapchop is a technique worth mastering, if for no other reason than you just get to sit around, enjoy yourself, and paint a miniature up real quick. One thing that I did notice while using this method was that I wasn't really happy with the desaturated and unvibrant edges. I really am a fan of punchy highlights, so I ended up opting to add a few additional edge highlights to important areas of the model. This step is totally optional, but I would encourage you to explore it if you haven't already. So there we have it, a finished slap-chopped model. This took me about 30 minutes total, including priming time and the extra highlights. Overall, for the time I put into it, I think the result is really nice. But I think we can get more out of this method. Let's see what I would consider my preferred approach to this style of painting. So let's evolve Slapchop. You've already seen how it's transformed miniature painting and made it faster and more accessible while still producing this high contrast and visually striking result. However, every great technique can be refined, and I think I'm taking Slapchop in a new direction. One that enhances the richness of color, deepens your shadows, and creates a more natural transition between light and dark. Instead of the standard gray and white dry brush, I want to introduce a purple and yellow pre-shade approach, specifically tailored for painting Blood Angel Space Marines. This modification leverages color theory and directional lighting to create a more dynamic finish, making red armor look richer and more dramatic with minimal effort. Traditional Slapchop relies on grayscale dry brushing to establish highlights before applying speed paints or contrast paints. While super effective, the approach can sometimes lead to desaturated results, especially on warm-colored miniatures like Blood Angels. By swapping out gray for purple and white for yellow, I'm enhancing the pre-highlighted contrast while also injecting hints of a complementary color that are going to interact with the final red layer in a more interesting way. So purple for our shadows is a fantastic shade color for red because it adds depth and richness without making the model look muddy. A low-angle dry brush with purple will settle in the recesses, acting as a cool undercoat that enhances the natural shading of the armor. Instead of a plain white highlight, yellow provides warmth and vibrancy, complementing the red speed paint that's going to go over it. Since yellow is a component of orange, which naturally bridges into red, this top highlight will make the final color glow, rather than appearing washed out. This method isn't just about aesthetics, it's about color harmony and natural lighting, making the Blood Angels look even more striking on the tabletop. So, for a step-by-step walkthrough. So one is going to be priming in black. As with the standard Slapchop, the first step is priming the miniature completely black, ensuring deep shadows remain intact and providing a strong base for contrast. The second is going to be, instead of a full-body gray dry brush, using a dark purple dry brush from below. This simulates shadows cast from ambient light, reinforcing depth in the armor's recesses. The trick is to use a controlled directional approach, keeping most of the purple in areas that would naturally receive less light. Think of this as doing a directional airbrush, but taking out the airbrush and making it more beginner-friendly. Then we're going to do an upward angled dry brush of yellow. So take a warm yellow to create our highlights. Since yellow interacts well with red tones, it ensures the final coat has a natural warmth. This step is critical because it's going to soften our transitions, preventing stark contrast lines that sometimes happen with white dry brushing. Before we start doing speed paints, we're then going to do a final layer of a brighter purple. Go ahead and do a light dry brush along all of our purple sides, and then an ice yellow along our upward facing yellow edges. And now comes the magic, the red speed paint. Normally, applying red over a grayscale, Slapchop foundation can sometimes feel flat or pink even. However, with the purple shadows and yellow highlights, the red interacts in a way that naturally is going to create an orange highlight on the armor's edges. When you're highlighting red, you have two typical options. Either highlight it towards the pink spectrum by adding white, or highlight it towards the orange spectrum by adding yellow. This effect builds that in, and it makes the Blood Angels look more dynamic, almost like they're glowing under a setting sun. So those are the traditional Slapchop steps. After you've completed those, there are a few options for other ways that you could take this that we aren't going to follow in this specific tutorial. For one, you could edge highlight with a bright orange or yellow to enhance the uppermost edges of the armor. You can add a wash of purple in deep recesses to further enhance your contrast. Or you can even like glaze with some additional bright reds to smooth out transitions for an even more polished look. However, in this guide, I just wanted to show what the purest and easiest, quickest method could be to getting a bright result. And I promise you, this jumps off the tabletop. For 20 minutes of work, this model looks better than some of the stuff that I've spent hours and hours on. So why do I think this approach works better in general than just the traditional Slapchop approach? In my opinion, it comes down to taking color theory into account. Traditional Slapchop does an excellent job of emphasizing contrasts, but by introducing hues that support our final color that we're going for, we end up creating a more organic and richer buildup. We build in warmth and depth into it, and the purple shadows, for instance, add realism and weight, while our yellow highlights keep the red from feeling too dark or desaturated, and eventually get it up to that orange highlight color that we're looking for at the end. This method is perfect for those painting large squads of, for instance, Blood Angels quickly, as it maintains Slapchop's core efficiencies while elevating the final result to something more visually engaging and unique. By pushing Slapchop beyond its grayscale roots, we unlock new creative possibilities, proving that even speed painting techniques can evolve and improve. Blood Angels have never looked better, especially for 20 minutes, and this new approach is just the beginning. You could start from a blue and go up to yellow for salamanders, or start from an orange up to either white or ice yellow for imperial fists. The options really are endless. Just focus on your color wheel. What tones are directly below and above your midtone? Take those and run with it for interesting shading. So, my method took 20 minutes from the start of priming up to this point, and honestly, I think the color variety, depth, and overall visual interest really carries it. Sure, we don't have edge highlights or painted eyes, so what? You won't see most of those details from tabletop height anyways. It's a super quick way to get dynamic minis on the tabletop super fast. Alrighty, let's see them side by side. One thing that sticks out to me is how desaturated the normal Slapchop one looks sitting next to our new model, which makes sense. After all, Slapchop is just layering transparent paints over whites and grays. You won't end up getting much vibrancy from it. I think both methods really work well, and you just have to pick which one you like the best, or even create your own way of doing it. At the end of the day, if you're getting miniatures on the table that you're happy with, do with them as you will. If you've made it this far, I would really appreciate it if you did me a favor and left a comment down below. Do you prefer traditional Slapchop, my way of doing it, or do you have your own style of speed painting? Also, while you're there, be sure to drop a like and subscribe, as we're sitting at about 95% of people that are watching that aren't subscribed at this rate. With that, I will leave you guys. I hope you all got something from the video, and I will see you in the next one. Have a good day.